Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I'm Sally Ganga from College Coach, and happy almost New Year. We're actually taping this on the 14th, but it's going to go live on the 30th, so it'll almost be New Year. I'm looking forward to it. I know Jan is, so I'm guessing that the rest of you are too. And for any seniors who are listening, I hope you've submitted all your applications and can now relax and maybe even have heard a little good news from your earlies. Very hopeful for you for that. With the new year comes goal setting, and my first and second segments are all about that. My first is with Jan Combs, who, if you're watching this on video, you'll see her here now. And she's one of my finance colleagues from College Coach. She'll be giving tips on setting financial goals for the New Year's resolutions. And my second is with Zaragoza Guerra, a longtime colleague of mine here at College Coach. He and I will be discussing general New Year's goals outside of finances. And then I'll be wrapping things up with Sarah Calvert-Kubrum, another colleague of mine, formerly of Lewis and Clark College. And she and I will be discussing what to do once you have submitted all of your applications. Can you just forget about them? Almost, but not quite. So on to my first segment. Welcome, Jan.
Thank you, Sally. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I always enjoy the finance segments because those are the areas where I know almost nothing, like really almost nothing. I know a lot about the other stuff. I know almost nothing about this. So, all right. So when do you think is the best time to establish new financial goals? Do people have to wait until the 1st of January?
No, they don't. But thank you for asking that. I really think any time is perfect. I mean, my family, I'm a nerd. Every year on New Year's Day, we do our big spending plan. We have for over 30 years, but you don't have to do it on the 1st. I really do firmly believe that any time is fine. When you have a big milestone, maybe someone just graduating from college, or you're getting married, or you're getting a new job, anytime, of course. But, since it's almost the New Year's, why not start now? Either doing it the last day of the year or the first day of the year, or whatever works for you.
I have to say, I'm impressed that you do it every year. I've started doing more of that because I want to take I'm like, okay, I want to go to Australia. That's going to be expensive. Yes. I actually have to plan for that. It's not just like going to California where I have friends I can stay with and it's just the airfare, So
exactly.
Yeah. All right. And how do you set goals? I know that for a lot of this can be really overwhelming. And in all honesty, it was I don't think I really got my financial life together until I hit 40. To be honest, that's how old I was. I think when I finally started being systematic and really planning more, I would say. So how does one begin? How does one overcome that sort of fear and anxiety?
Sure. And I think planning is a perfect word that you used. And I also love the fact that you shared one of your goals, right? And I always say to people when they ask, well, how do I get started? Just dream a little, please just dream a little. Think about what's most important to you. What do you value, right? Because your goals really are going to extend from your personal values, right? So think about what's important to you, dream a little bit. That's going to help you set those goals. So you've got Australia, that's perfect. You can start saving towards that. So think about what's important to you. If you value your career and you think you might need higher education, well, maybe your goal is going to be additional schooling, or maybe you value adventure, right? Like you do, because you're going to Australia and you want to save for a particular trip or adventure gear, for example, or maybe you're debt adverse. And you want to start putting money towards a particular debt. So just think about what's important to you, dream a little bit, and come up with your list. That's really the best place to start.
Yeah, I remember when a close friend of mine was like, well, I don't travel because I can't afford it. And I'm like, well, but you can, because you actually make more money than I do. I was like, I'm not saying that you should, right? You might have other priorities, but just to say, no, I can't. Is, what if you put up $100 a month away towards it?
Right.
Eventually you'd be able to. Yeah.
Their priority wasn't the same as ours, right? Making travel a priority. So that's another perfect example. Make what's a priority to you and what's important to you, and then just get started. And it's okay to start small too.
Exactly. $100 over time is going to add up to enough to go to Europe if that's your goal, or wherever it might be. All right. So let's say once someone comes up with a dream, then, or multiple dreams, right? How do you move forward?
Yeah, so I think you have to start small, right? So that you're not completely overwhelmed. And I think it's really important to either do a budget or a spending plan, right? Because
Mhm.
money doesn't just happen, right? You kind of have to plan how to use your money in an appropriate way. So I like using spending plans because those allow you to look at, say, each pay period that you have. Maybe you get paid once a month, maybe you
Mhm.
get paid twice a month. Look at each pay period and then figure out what's coming in and then what things you don't have a choice. You have to pay your rent, you have to pay your car
Mhm.
payment, whatever it is. All of those legitimate mandatory payments,
Mhm.
account for those. And then see what's left. Do you have $50 left? Do you have 250 left? And then give every single dollar that's left over a job, right?
Mhm.
In your case, maybe you have one goal and that's Australia, and you might be saving every available dollar to that. Or you might have three different goals and you're going to prioritize those goals. And for every dollar left over in that spending plan, right, period, whether it's 2 weeks or a month, you're going to allocate those dollars directly. That's how you take control of your money and make decisions yourself and prioritize where every single dollar goes. One of my colleagues always says, give every dollar a job, right? And
Mhm.
make sure they're doing their job.
Right. Well, and the other thing that I like about this is that for a long time I made very little money. And so there was just this sense of scarcity that I had. And I realized that I have enough now. It's like a very strange feeling, like I'm going to meet my retirement goals. So I have money that I know is dispensable, like, or that I can
Yeah.
use the way I want to use it, because
Yeah.
everything else is happening automatically. Right.
Yes.
And so what I like about this too is that I was able to be like, no, I can go to Australia.
Yeah.
I can do this because I know how much money I need for these other things,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
So that's, I think, the positive side of this is if,
Yeah.
really, if you are always worried about not having enough money,
Sure. And using budgets and spending tools, actually writing it down is real. I think personally it's important to help you stay on track and reach those
Mhm.
goals.
Yeah. Or if you're, young, putting it in your phone. Like I actually make
Yes,
lists.
exactly.
I actually make
You're
lists.
my three
Okay, good.
children using
Yeah.
their phone for everything. You're right.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
agree.
That's what my nephew does. So,
Yeah.
um, all right. And so I think for a lot of us, though, it is going to be difficult to set up a spending plan. So
Yeah.
what are some tools that might be, available for that?
Sure. And I always like to say it's not so much difficult. It's not that difficult, but you do need to sit down and spend time initially to set it up and then revisit for every pay period.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly there's some phenomenal apps, as you've already mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
or online tools. Consumerfinance.gov has some great tools. They're neutral. NerdWallet, Mint, even Google Sheets has templates. Excel spreadsheets has templates.
Mm-hmm.
Many financial services companies as well. You might have a favorite company that you work with. They have a lot of their own tools, calculators, budgeting sheets, spending plan sheets. So using what's available to you for free, whether it's through a related company or an online source, there's plenty of resources out there. Pick one, just get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to say I've used NerdWallet a lot, and it was
Yep,
really helpful when I was first got myself out of credit card debt and did what I
yep,
needed to do. So,
absolutely.
mm-hmm.
Yep, a true testament right there.
Yeah, no, I will. I read like everything in there, and it helped a lot. So, so even if one sets up a spending plan and starts allocating extra money towards certain goals, is that enough to say that you have a goal? Like, are there ways of defining goals? Like, it's kind of a big thing to say, I want to go to Australia, right? And that can just kind of hang over your head. So how do you make it happen?
Yep, that's a big goal. And again, I think a spending plan and a budget is a good first step, but I think diving deeper into the actual goal is really important. I personally love my Boston accent's going to kick in, so be careful here. Smart goals instead of smart goals. So
Yeah.
smart goals is the system that I like that's worked well for me. And basically, you might have heard of SMART goals. It is a common practice even in the workplace, right? We might use them to work on projects together or reach professional goals, for example. So SMART goals can be used within the work environment. It also very much pertains to personal finance goals as well. And so we all know how to spell SMART, right? And so the S, of course, is going to stand for specific. When you set those goals, they should be clear and specific. so we know Sally wants to go to Australia. She's clear and specific about that. It must also be measurable, right? Goals need to be able to be measurable so that you stay on track, right? So you can show that you're making progress. They also need to be achievable, right? Goals that are realistic and achievable, you tend to be more successful. So you need to understand the necessary steps, right? And then of course, relevant, that ensures that it's kind of aligning with your values. You love to travel, it's very relevant, it's aligning with your values. And of course, all goals have to be timely, right? They have to have a time component. They have a target date, and that way you know exactly the commitment that you're making to that target date, excuse me. So SMART goals, I think, are pretty important.
Yeah, I recommend them to students all the time. And, you know, to the extent that, like, when I think about what I do every day, a lot of students are like, I want to go to X college. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's break it down what you need to do to get there. Let's look at the impact of not doing your homework some nights.
Right,
Is that getting you closer to that goal or farther away from that goal?
Right.
You know, so
I'm going to use that with my youngest.
I used it with one student of mine. I said, do you want to go to a community college? And he was like, absolutely not. And I said, okay, well, you're making choices when you don't do your homework to go to a community college. You may not realize it, but that is the choice you're making. And he was like, oh my God. So, all right. So that SMART goal approach, that does seem interesting and useful. I mean, can you give, I mean, we already talked about Australia, but let's go into some real depth with a particular goal as opposed to being more generic.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's easy to create a generic goal, right? We do that, I'm sure, all the time, but to be very specific. So a general goal might be, hey, I want a new bike, right? Pretty basic, pretty simple. A SMART goal forces us to think through all the relevant details to get to that point. So I might instead say, I want a new bike by midsummer. So I can spend more time outdoors or ride in that particular race that's important. So it's relevant to my values. The brand X bike costs X amount, right? And so I'm going to save $50 every week, January to July, so that I can pay for that $1,200 bike. So it's timely, it's achievable, it's relevant, it's detailed, it's specific, and that allows you to chart your progress over time to reach that goal versus just saying, I want a new bike and hope that I remember to put $100 in the savings pot at a particular time. Similar, I had a conversation with my oldest child recently. He just graduated from college in May. He's a nurse now. He's making a really good salary. And he says to me the other night, Mom, I want to pay off my student loans really quick. He enters repayment in February. And I said, all right, how are you going to do that? Well, I'm just going to pay him off. I said, no, let's chart it out. And we used the SMART goal approach. And we said, it's what's the amount? So that's specific and it's measurable. He looked it up. He did a spending plan to figure out how much he has available each paycheck. He gets paid every 2 weeks. And he knows that in, I think it was 23 months. So starting in February, he could pay off his loans over a 23-month period, adding X amount per month. So now he has a distinct plan in place versus just saying, I want to pay off my loans quicker. So it can apply to all sorts of things. It can apply to debt and it can apply to wish lists as well.
There is something inspiring too when you see, oh, that's the end point. Like if you don't plan it out like that, you're not going to see that end point. But if you plot it out, you'll see how it's actually going to happen.
Yep. And that's where the timely piece comes into play, is like you said, knowing that endpoint. And you're also committing to a particular period of time, which I think makes it a realer situation for you as well. So yeah, I agree.
Okay, great. Anything else people should think about for 2022? Anything coming up that can help people get started even, or?
Sure. I mean, some of the things I like to think about at the very end of the year, and that's where we are, right? I love it when people think about using their tax refund for something important, or a year-end bonus, if that applies to you. I think kind of thinking about the tax refund, is it coming, maybe get a sense of how much you might get back or how much you might usually get back, or what your year-end bonus is, if that applies, or even gifts during the holidays, right, that may be coming in that you think you might be getting, make a plan for that. Give each of those dollars a job as well, right? And whether you're starting a savings goal with that tax refund or that money from Hanukkah or Christmas or whatever, use that money and think about it. So think about it now, how you're going to spend that tax refund, how you're going to spend that bonus, how you're going to allocate it. I think that's a really great practice for the end of the year, right?
Mhm.
And then also, it's never a bad time to pull your credit report at the beginning of the year, right? Everyone can get a free credit report. The government recommends annualcreditreport.com. Go there, you pull a free credit report from one of the 3 credit reporting entities and just check your information, right? Make sure you're starting the year off right with correct information on your credit report. That's another great practice to do, often, but certainly if you haven't done it, now is a good time to do it. It's either at the end of the year or the beginning of the year. Those are 2 things I love to think about at the beginning of the year: tax refunds and credit reports.
And I like it that those are really short-term goals too. Like start there and you will have achieved something good already.
Yep, absolutely. I love that positive spin on it.
Well, I know I've noticed about myself that the long-term goals are more challenging, but when I can do kind of a something that gives me the check this off the list, it sort of helps me tackle the things that are longer term. So
yeah,
like to throw that out
it's
there.
always helpful to check something off the list, get rid of a little
Exactly.
bit of debt or whatnot. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Anything to wrap it up that I haven't asked you about, or I think we're.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck saving for Australia and everyone else out there starting their savings goals. I always just remind people it's very personal what your goals are. There's no right or wrong. Just set your goals based on your personal values. Start small if you have to. Use the spending plan as a guide, and all of those great online resources that I shared earlier. That's what they're there for. Use them, start small, and progress, from there, for sure. And Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year. All right. Thank you so much, Jan.
All right. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Me too. All right. Now we'll be taking a short break, but when we return, I'll be talking with Zaragoza Guerra about New Year's resolutions.